What if the most powerful empire is not the one that conquers the world by force, but the one the world chooses to depend on? More than 2,000 years ago, Alexander the Great built an empire with armies, speed, fear, and conquest. Cities surrendered, kings bowed, the map changed behind him, but Alexander's empire had to move forward by force. Every new land had to be reached, every border had to be crossed, every victory had to be taken. Amazon built something different. No army, no battlefield, no empire drawn on a map. It began with books, then became the everything store, then Prime, then warehouses, then cloud computing, then advertising, then entertainment, then artificial intelligence, and slowly, the world did not just buy from Amazon, it began to build around it. Customers depended on its speed, sellers depended on its marketplace, companies depended on its cloud, and entire industries began to orbit its system. An empire no longer needs to conquer when everything starts depending on it. But the moment the world depends on one empire, the world also begins to fear it. This is Alexander the Great versus Amazon, the gravity of empire. Before Amazon, before algorithms, before warehouses, servers, delivery networks, and cloud infrastructure, empire meant something simple: movement, force, control. Alexander understood this better than almost anyone in history. He did not inherit a quiet kingdom and protect it. He took a small Macedonian power and turned it into a moving storm. His army crossed mountains, entered deserts, broke through enemy lines, and moved faster than the old world could understand. To the cities in his path, Alexander was not just a king, he was gravity. Once he arrived, everything around him changed direction. Some fought him, some surrendered, some joined him, but almost no one could ignore him. This is the first law of empire. At the beginning, power moves toward the world. It marches, it crosses borders, it forces a choice: stand against it or become part of it. Alexander's genius was not only that he conquered, it was that every victory made the next victory easier. After each battle, he gained more land, more wealth, more soldiers, more routes, more legitimacy. The empire did not simply grow, it became heavier, and the heavier it became, the more the world around it was pulled into its orbit. That is how old empires worked. They expanded by pressure. They created order after violence. They turned distance into territory, territory into control, and control into destiny. But there was a hidden danger inside this machine. The more Alexander conquered, the more conquest became his identity. Stopping was no longer a strategy. Stopping began to feel like betrayal. Because when an empire is built by movement, stillness feels like death. Amazon did not look like an empire at the beginning. It looked like a website, a bookstore, a small digital door into a larger future. No armies, no flags, no cities burning in the distance. Just a screen, a catalogue, and a promise that the world could become easier. But this is how new empires begin, not with a sword, but with a better system. Amazon did not force people to enter. It made entering feel obvious. First, it sold books, then more products, then almost everything. Then it changed the meaning of delivery. Fast became normal, convenient became expected. Waiting began to feel outdated. And with Prime, Amazon did something more powerful than selling. It created a habit, a subscription, a rhythm, a quiet agreement between the customer and the empire. You pay once and the world moves faster for you. But customers were only the first layer. Sellers came next. For millions of businesses, Amazon was not just a marketplace. It was access. Access to customers, access to trust, access to a machine they could never build alone. Then came AWS, and suddenly, Amazon was no longer only moving products, it was powering the invisible infrastructure of the internet, startups, corporations, applications. Data. Entire digital businesses began to run on Amazon's cloud. This was not conquest in the old sense. No battlefield, no surrender ceremony, no empire drawn with borders. But the effect was similar. More people entered the system, more businesses depended on it, more industries adjusted around it. And the larger Amazon became, the more useful it became. The more useful it became, the harder it became to avoid. This is the gravity of the new empire. It does not need to invade your city. It becomes the road, the market, the warehouse, the cloud, and the habit. Amazon did not conquer by force. It conquered by becoming useful. At first, dependence does not feel like dependence. It feels like convenience. It feels like speed. It feels like a better way to live. This is why the new empire is so powerful. No one feels conquered when the box arrives tomorrow. No one feels conquered when the website already knows what they need. No one feels conquered when a business gets instant access to millions of customers. No one feels conquered when a startup can build on cloud infrastructure instead of buying servers. The system feels helpful, efficient, almost invisible. And that is the point. The strongest empires are not always the ones people fear at the beginning. Sometimes they are the ones people welcome. Amazon became useful in more places than most people realized. In the home, it was delivery. In the marketplace, it was access. In business, it was infrastructure. In entertainment, it was attention. In advertising, it was data. And in the cloud, became part of the digital ground beneath other companies. This is where scale becomes gravity, because every new user makes the system stronger. Every new seller makes the marketplace deeper. Every new warehouse makes delivery faster. Every new customer makes the data more valuable. Every new service makes the empire harder to leave. At a certain size, growth no longer looks like expansion. It looks like nature. People stop asking why the system is everywhere. They simply begin to expect it. And that is when usefulness becomes something else. It becomes dependence. A seller may not love the empire, but the customers are there. A company may not want to rely on one cloud, but the infrastructure already works. A customer may not think about Amazon every day until the delivery speed disappears. This is the softer form of conquest. Not conquest by sword, not conquest by fear, but conquest by necessity, because when the world builds around one system, leaving that system becomes expensive, slow, risky, almost unnatural. And this is the danger hidden inside the gravity of empire. The more useful the empire becomes, the more the world depends on it. And the more the world depends on it, the more the world begins to ask a dangerous question. Who controls the system that everyone else now needs? Every empire creates resistance, not always at the beginning. At the beginning, an empire can feel like progress. It brings speed, order, access, a larger world. Alexander didn't only destroy, he connected cities, opened routes, moved cultures, soldiers, money, and ideas across enormous distances. To some, his empire looked like a new world being born, but every empire has a cost. The army gets tired, the roads grow longer, the center moves farther away. The people inside the machine begin to feel its weight, and eventually, the same force that once pulled the world together begins to create pressure. For Alexander, that pressure became visible at the edge of India. His soldiers had marched for years. They had crossed deserts, mountains, rivers, and empires. They had won battles that should have broken them. But when Alexander wanted to go farther, they refused. Not because the empire was weak, because the empire had become too heavy to carry. This was the old world's version of resistance, a tired army, a distant river, a conqueror who still wanted more. Amazon's resistance looks different. There is no battlefield, no exhausted army standing in the rain, no single river where the empire must stop. Instead, the resistance comes from everywhere at once, From regulators asking how much power one company should hold, from sellers asking whether access has become dependence, from workers asking who pays the human cost of speed, from competitors asking whether the marketplace is still a fair battlefield, from society asking a deeper question: when one company becomes part store, part logistics network, part cloud infrastructure, part advertising machine, part entertainment platform, and part invisible operating system for the digital economy, who is really in control? This is what happens when usefulness becomes too large to ignore. The same system that once felt convenient starts to feel unavoidable. The same speed that customers loved starts to create pressure on everyone behind it. The same marketplace that gave sellers access starts to decide who is seen, who is buried, who survives, and who disappears. The same cloud that made building easier starts to raise a quiet fear. What happens if too much of the digital world depends on one empire? This is the turning point, not collapse, not failure, not the end of Amazon, something more subtle. The moment the world begins to separate usefulness from power. At first, people ask what the empire can do for them. Later, they ask what the empire can do to them. That is when gravity becomes fear, and fear becomes resistance. This is the lesson of empire. Power does not always begin with fear. Sometimes it begins with usefulness, with speed, with access, with a better way to organize the world. Alexander's empire began with conquest, but conquest alone was not enough. Every victory had to become order. Every road had to become movement. Every city had to become part of a larger system. The sword opened the door, but the system kept the empire alive. Amazon represents the modern version of that same force. Not conquest by sword, not conquest by fire, not conquest by armies crossing borders, but conquest by infrastructure, by convenience, by habit, by dependence. Alexander made the world surrender. Amazon made the world connect, and that may be the deeper form of empire, because the strongest empire is not always the one that forces people inside. It may be the one people enter willingly until leaving becomes almost impossible. That is the gravity of empire. At first, the world moves toward it because it wants to. Later, the world stays inside it because it has to. And this is where every great empire faces its pivot point. Can it remain useful without becoming feared? Can it remain powerful without becoming too necessary? Can it keep growing without turning the world around it into dependence? Alexander reached his limit at a river. His army looked at the next horizon and refused to keep carrying the weight of his ambition. Amazon's river is harder to see. It is not one place, not one battle, not one moment. It is the growing resistance around a system that became too important to ignore. Regulators, sellers, workers, competitors, customers, governments, the world that once moved toward the empire now begins to ask what the empire has become. And maybe that is the real warning. An empire no longer needs to conquer when everything starts depending on it. But the moment the world depends on one empire, the world also begins to fear it. Alexander showed us the old empire, the empire of force, the empire of movement, the empire that crossed the world until the world pushed back. Amazon shows us the new empire, the empire of systems, the empire of convenience, the empire that does not need to own the map because it becomes the ground beneath it. And that is why this story matters, not because Amazon is Alexander, not because history repeats itself perfectly, but because the psychology of empire survives. The tools change, the roads become servers, the marketplaces become platforms, the armies become networks, the borders become invisible, but the question remains the same. How much gravity can one empire create before the world begins to resist being pulled in? This is the pivot point, and this was Alexander the Great versus Amazon, the gravity of empire. If this story made you see power differently, then this channel is built for you. Here we study the moments when empires rise, when giants hesitate, and when one decision changes everything. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to The Pivot Point, and I will see you in the next empire.